My name is Elena Rodriguez. I am 32 years old, originally from San Antonio, Texas, but for the last 7 years I have lived in the hustle and glass of New York City. By profession, I am a marketing strategist at a bright, fast-growing tech firm downtown. From the outside, my life looks Instagram-worthy. A high-rise apartment near the East River, brunch photos with friends in Soho, and vacations that appear warm and glittering under familiar filters. But like every photograph that frames a smile while the heart beats differently, my life has been a careful arrangement, hiding things I could never explain so bluntly on a caption. This story is not about perfect vacation pictures. It's about the weeks I deliberately hid my truth, burying it beneath glossy beachfront posts. What I was really doing in those late summer days was not sitting beneath Hawaiian sunsets or exploring the Californian coast, as my feed suggested. Instead, I had retreated quietly, almost desperately, into a wellness center in Vermont, far away from skyscrapers and emails, hoping the silence and structure would repair parts of my mind unraveling with anxiety. I told no one except my best friend Mariah. Not my colleagues. Not even him, the man I loved. I shielded him, fed him illusions, because I could not bear to add my fears to the weight he already carried in his life. But stories cannot stay confined forever. Like sunlight through shutters, the truth forces its way in. Before I take you deeper into Vermont, into the walls of Ashwood Wellness Retreat, and into the nights where my breath was too shallow to sleep, I must tell you what brought me there. Because healing never happens in isolation. Pain has a prelude. It began slowly, in fragments I did not catch at first. The first clue was at work, during a client presentation. I stood before a giant screen, my slides neat, my data crisp. Suddenly my chest felt as if it had been laced with a tightening belt. My hands trembled behind the podium. I forced myself to smile, but every word seemed to wobble, balancing on air that refused to flow. Afterward, people congratulated me, "Great pitch, Elena." But by then I had locked myself in the bathroom, panicking, pressing my palm against my ribs as if I could steady something invisible. The episodes repeated. At night, while scrolling through social media or washing dished plates, a weight would arrive unannounced, pressing down, leaving me gasping against silence. And then there was him, Adrian. He was kind, steadier than I had ever been, working long shifts as a resident doctor at Mount Sinai. His life rotated around emergencies, patients, and pages at odd hours. When he came home, too tired to even untie his shoes before sinking into the edge of my couch, I wrapped him in quiet comfort. How could I confess that I too was breaking in hidden ways? So, instead, I began hiding. I went on posting glossy squares. A weekend coffee in Williamsburg. A morning run near Central Park. An image of me smiling on a pier, though the picture was from the previous year. Nothing was current. It was easier to stitch together a world than to expose the chaos inside. And then one dawn, unable to breathe, unable even to explain why the city's lights suddenly felt like cages, I searched the internet. Wellness Retreat Vermont Anxiety Recovery. That was how I discovered Ashwood Wellness Center. By mid-July, I was on a bus heading north, telling Adrian I needed time to visit an aunt, while he kissed my forehead, promising to check in. I smiled, already planning to send him scheduled vacation photos from my drafts folder so he would never suspect it. But inside me, a quieter story had begun. The bus ride from Manhattan to Vermont carried me through shifting landscapes of gray highways, small towns, and eventually green pastures that looked like they belonged to some other century. By the time we pulled into the nearest station to Ashwood Wellness Retreat, my phone buzzed with Adrian's good morning text. "Hope you're enjoying the sun wherever you are. Don't forget sunscreen." I stared at that line for a moment longer than necessary before replying with a picture I'd prepared earlier, a turquoise ocean view from a trip to Miami 2 years ago. The lie left my throat dry, though no one could hear it. A shuttle from Ashwood, marked only discreetly with a single painted leaf, picked me up along with 3 other guests. None of us spoke much. We were strangers bound by different, unspoken reasons for being there. One woman in her 50s stared out of the window with weary eyes, a notebook clutched tight to her chest. A young man scrolled nervously on his phone until the driver gently reminded us, no devices after arrival. They take them for safekeeping. When we reached the retreat, it didn't look like the sterile place I half feared. Ashwood sat on a hillside, surrounded by forest, with buildings made of dark cedar and stone that blended into the earth, as if they had always belonged. There were walking trails weaving into the woods, and the faint smell of pine spread through the air like a balm. We were asked politely but firmly to hand over our phones at reception. For most, it was a relief. For me, it was panic. How would I keep my disguise without constant access to my digital mask? Fortunately, I had anticipated this. I'd already set my social media posts on schedule through my laptop back in New York, rigging up images to release every few days, me sipping coconuts, me staring at horizons. Everything would look convincing while I disappeared into these Vermont woods. Inside my chest, the anxiety rumbled like thunder. A staff member led me to my room. It was small but warm, wooden floors with a wool rug, a wide window framing trees swaying in summer wind, and a bed neatly tucked with crisp white sheets. There was no television. No desk glowing with screens. Only silence and the smallest night lamp on the side table. My body felt the absence of distractions like the absence of oxygen. The quiet startled me. I sat on the bed, fingers twitching to reach for my phone, but it was gone. Only me and this stillness. That first night, I struggled to sleep. Thoughts ran wild. What if Adrian suspects? What if the photos don't fool him? What if he thinks I lied? My heart pounded into my ear like a drum, and for hours I lay awake, tracing cracks on the ceiling with my eyes. Life at Ashwood followed strict rhythms. We woke at 6, breakfasted on oatmeal and fruit with tea, then spent mornings in meditation sessions or gentle yoga, afternoons in group therapy, and evenings journaling or hiking trails in silence. It was not the glossy spa experience some might imagine. It was discipline, reflection, sometimes excruciating stillness. The first meditation session broke me. The guide, a soft-spoken woman named Claire, sat at the front of the room encouraging us to simply notice our breath. Inhale, exhale, notice. No judgment. I sat cross-legged on the cushion, staring at the floor and tried. Within seconds, panic unspooled. Noticing my breath meant noticing its shallowness, its jagged rhythm. My chest rose and fell like drowning, each inhale a thief, each exhale a question. My throat tightened until tears, not calm, blurred my vision. After class, Claire approached me. She didn't pry. She only asked, "Would you like some tea?" That question undid me further. No one in New York had asked me anything in such softness for months. I nodded, following her to a porch where steam rose from mugs, the mountain air cool around us. Sometimes, Claire said quietly, noticing the breath makes us realize how much fear we're holding in the body. That's the beginning, not the end. I didn't reply, but something in her words settled inside me like a stone placed firmly on shifting ground. Every evening, after therapy sessions and silent meals, my thoughts bent back toward him, Adrian. The retreat didn't let us use phones, but we had a small window each week where we could write letters or use supervised email. I knew I couldn't break my illusion. So during those precious minutes, I stuck to my plan, brief, cheerful notes, stories stitched from old photographs and invented sunsets. "Miami is lovely this time of year," I typed once, attaching a picture of me on a boardwalk 2 summers ago. I even tried paddleboarding, though I fell twice. "You'd have laughed." And he did laugh. His reply came the next day, "Wish I was with you." The hospital's chaos. "Your photos keep me alive right now." Guilt struck deeper than the anxiety itself. My lies, not cruel lies, but protective ones, were building a scaffolding around him, keeping him from seeing me unravel. I told myself it was mercy. I told myself love meant shielding him from weight he didn't need. But each time his messages glowed with encouragement, my stomach tightened. How long could I keep pretending to be by the sea while in truth I was drinking chamomile tea among strangers in Vermont? On the 4th day at Ashwood, during group therapy, a man named Thomas spoke. He was in his 40s, broad-shouldered but weary-eyed, and his honesty stripped the room bare. "I lied to everyone," he admitted. On Facebook, I was posting gym shots, barbecue nights, work anniversaries. But in reality, I couldn't leave my house without drowning in panic. My wife thought I was just tired. My coworkers thought I was happy. I built a whole parade just so no one saw the scaffolding collapsing underneath. The group was silent, holding the weight of his words. And in his truth, I glimpsed my own. I was no different. I too was hiding behind curated pixels. That night, when I lay in bed beneath the twin window shadows, I whispered into the emptiness of my room, "Adrian, I'm not in Miami. I'm here. I'm broken." The walls heard, though he did not. A week later, I drafted a letter to him in one of the retreat's journals. "Adrian, I need to tell you something. The photos I've been sending, they're not real. I wanted you to picture me happy, glowing by beaches, because I couldn't tell you I was falling apart. I'm at a retreat, learning how to breathe, how to live without drowning in myself. I didn't want you to worry. I didn't want to add my storms to yours. But I miss you more honestly than I've ever missed anything." I folded the page, sealed it in an envelope, but when the time came to mail letters, I couldn't bring myself to drop it in the basket. Instead, I shoved it under my pillow. My disguise lived on. The second week brought something new, silence. A full 3-day vow of silence where retreat members were asked not to speak, not even whisper greetings in the dining hall. At first, it sounded unnecessary, even strange. But as hours stretched by, I began to realize how much noise words had been carrying in me. Without them, I could hear the churn of my thoughts with raw clarity. In silence, memories of Adrian surfaced sharper. His tired smile, his worn-out scrubs, his laugh when I teased him about misplacing his keys daily. I found myself crying between tall oaks on the retreat's walking trail, cheeks wet, chest releasing years of breath I had been withholding. Healing wasn't glamorous. It wasn't yoga poses or herbal teas arranged like a magazine spread. It was crying into moss, it was shaking in therapy circles, it was facing the jagged truth that I thought lies could shield me from love's burden, when really, they only built a wall between us. By the middle of the second week, silence had carved something open in me. I moved slower, breathed deeper, but inside I carried a burning question. What was I so afraid of telling Adrian? I told myself the answer was simple, that his life was already burdened. As a medical resident, he carried exhaustion, responsibility, the ache of watching lives slip away. I thought adding my unraveling mind would only weigh him down. But the more I turned this over under Vermont's canopy of trees, the more it felt like I was protecting not him, but myself from his possible disappointment, from the risk of being seen as weak. One evening, after a group hike, Claire sat beside me on the porch. She rarely pried, but she seemed to sense my restlessness. "You're holding something unspoken," she murmured into the dusk. I looked out toward the mountains, blue with sunset. "I've been lying to someone I love. I'm letting him believe I'm on some glittering vacation. I send him photos, old ones. But the truth is I'm here, piecing myself back together. And I want to tell him, but I can't." Claire didn't react with shock or judgment. She just nodded, letting silence take shape before she said, "Sometimes protection and fear look like twins. The trick is knowing which one you're feeding." Her words lodged in me like stones shifting in a riverbed. On the 15th day, we were given limited phone access for emergencies. For most, that meant a quick 2-minute call to check in with family. For me, it felt like fate cornering me. I dialed his number, rehearsing a quick, breezy voice, prepared to continue the masquerade. When he answered, his voice was soft and weary. "Lena, I've missed you." I forced a laugh. "I've missed you too. Miami is bright." The lie slid out again, though it caught in my throat this time. He sighed, and for a moment, silence hung. "You know what's funny? Every photo you sent looked familiar. Like I'd seen them before." The air froze. My breath faltered. "I thought maybe I was just tired," he continued. "But tonight I realized those are places we went together already. Aren't they?" I couldn't answer. My heart thumped so loud I was sure he could hear it through the line. "Elena," he said softly, not accusingly, just aching. "Where are you really?" The words wouldn't form. My throat locked. My hand trembled so hard I nearly dropped the phone. I wanted to tell him everything, that I couldn't breathe in New York, that I was crumbling, that I lied only to protect him. But the retreat's clock blinked 5 seconds left. I'm okay, I choked instead. I'll explain soon. And then the call ended. I dropped onto the bed, my face in my hands, sobbing until exhaustion took me. He knew. He already knew. After that call, something shifted in me. Carrying the secret felt unbearable now that cracks had formed in its surface. The following days at therapy were harder, heavier. My journal swelled with confessions I couldn't yet send. On the third morning after, during yoga, my chest opened in a stretch, and I suddenly felt clarity. Not peace, but clarity. If I kept lying, I would lose not just Adrian's trust, but my own capacity to love fully. I knew then that the truth had to come out. Not in hints, not in vague promises, but fully, vulnerably. That night, I took out fresh paper and began the letter that would finally reach him. Adrian, I am not where I told you I'd be. Not beaches, not bright boardwalks. I came to Vermont to heal, not from fever or flu, but from something harder. Anxiety that drowned my days, panic that stole my breaths. I lied because I didn't want to add my weakness to your endless hours of pain and effort. But by lying, I took away from you the chance to love me as I really am. I am at Ashwood Retreat, learning to breathe, learning to live again. And I am terrified, but I don't want to be terrified alone anymore. This time, I sealed the letter and placed it in the basket for outgoing mail. My hand shook, but I did not take it back. It took nearly a week for his response to reach me. By then, late summer rain washed Vermont's hills, and I had let go of posting. My scheduled drafts had run dry, and for the first time in years, I didn't care. One morning, a staff member approached with a letter. My hands shook as I unfolded it. Elena, thank you for being brave enough to tell me. I suspected something long before your call, but I waited because I thought you'd open up when you were ready. You don't need to protect me from your storms. Love isn't built from curated moments, it's built from sitting together in the messy pieces too. I wish you were here, but more than that, I'm relieved you are where you need to be. Heal, Lena. Not for me, not for us, but for you. I'll be here when you return. Always, Adrian. Tears blurred the words, but they also washed something loose in me. For the first time, I did not feel my chest tighten with shame. Instead, I felt space. Space to breathe, space to heal, space to love without disguises. By September, as leaves began curling into gold, my stay at Ashwood came to its natural close. I no longer shook during meditation. Anxiety hadn't disappeared, but I had tools now: breathing, silence, words written in journals like lifelines. When I retrieved my phone, I deleted the staged vacation feed. It was time to stop living in pixels. It was time to live in what was messy, honest, and raw. Before I boarded the bus back to New York, I called him. There was no disguise in my voice this time. I'm coming home, I whispered, and I could hear his smile through the line. I understand now that lies, even protective ones, build heavier walls than truths. Posting vacation pictures from invented journeys seemed harmless, almost kind. But it cost me more than if I'd admitted my fragility from the start. The retreat taught me something more valuable than calm. It taught me that healing isn't a private act of running away. Healing is also letting others see us when we are trembling, giving them the gift of walking beside us, rather than only after our storms have passed. When I stepped off the bus in New York, Adrian was waiting. He didn't ask for explanations beyond what I'd already written. He only opened his arms, and I knew, finally, that I didn't need staged sunsets anymore. The reality was enough.